Hello and welcome to another episode of Osgoode Community Chronicles, where we explore the rich history, vibrant events, and remarkable stories that make up the Osgoode Ward and surrounding communities. In each episode, we dive deep into our local heritage, drawing from the meticulous records and research of our local historians and families. These invaluable resources allow us to bring you stories from the past, ensuring that the traditions that shaped our community are shared with future generations. Whether you're a lifelong resident like me, or a newcomer, join us as we tie our fascinating history to the present-day version of our beloved region of Osgoode and surrounding communities. I'm your host, Tracy Daviero. So much has happened since last week, but most notably, the provincial election took place yesterday, and we can now confirm that our Osgoode Ward Councillor, George DeRuse, is headed to Queen's Park. No matter how you voted, I hope you voted, this is really big news for our area, as it leaves a giant hole in a place where we have had really good representation to our city. George has been steadfast in keeping our rural community on the map at City Hall, and now someone else needs to pick up those reins and keep it going. I have heard that there are a number of people who are interested in running to replace him in a by-election. We'll have to see who those people are in the coming weeks. I can tell you for sure that they do have big shoes to fill. I wish my friend George all the best as our MPP. I'm excited that we'll be much closer to the table for things like infrastructure, schools, social services, highways, and all those things that the province looks after. In today's episode, we'll have our regular news and events calendar. Our business segment today is about the Osgoode Township Museum. Our historical segment introduces us to the McVey family. Our Community Voices segment showcases the life of Grace McVey Scarabelli. And we'll finish up with another mental health moment. Let's get into it. Every week on the podcast, we'll share some of the local events that are taking place in the area. So many people doing great things. Be sure that you get out to support them. A little bit of news first. I'm very excited to be working on a partnership with the Good Run this year. Carly and I discussed details this week. You know I'll share them with you when they're finalized, but it is going to be fun. And a reminder that the Good to Go Run Club can help you get ready to run the 5K in just 10 weeks. The club starts next week on March 3rd and goes till May 5th, just a few days before the big run. Are you good to go? If not, get in on this club to get yourself in shape and ready to take part. And of course, you can also just participate in the 2K if that's more your speed. Here are our events for this week. I do hope you had an opportunity to check out the community calendar that we set up. I announced it on last week's episode, and we're adding all relevant links to it now to make it easy for you to find the events that we tell you about every week on the podcast. You can find it at osgoodecommunitychronicles.com/calendar. This weekend, February 28th to March 1st, the I Heart Beer and Taco Festival is taking place at the EY Center. That is a 19-plus event with lots of food and drink vendors and activities as well. March 1st, the St. Patrick's Day Market is at the North Grenville Municipal Center in Kemptville, presented by the Eastern Ontario Craft and Gift Market. It runs from 10 till 3. Also, tomorrow, March 1st, the Russell Legion is hosting a fun and friendly cribbage tournament starting at 7 p.m. Registration is at 6:30 p.m. Stanley Sugarbush is open this weekend. Admission is $10 per person. Seniors pay $5 and under 2 years get in for free. The Sugar Shack is the place to check out the maple syrup production. They have tractor-drawn wagon rides, maple taffy, the farm museum, the pancake house, and of course you can visit the barn and the activity center to learn more about the history of the farm, and the farm shop to take home some of the wares of the farm, including, of course, maple syrup. On Sunday, March 2nd, Seedy Sunday is taking place at the Kemptville Greenhouse from 10 till 2. It's free to get in, and there is a seat swap, some info sessions, and lots of vendors will be there too. On Monday, March 3rd, Beth Donovan Hospice is holding an education session open to all called What is Dementia? Among other things, they will discuss what 10 warning signs are and how you can interpret the signs in yourself or in others. It starts at 10 a.m. and of course, Beth Donovan Hospice is located on French Settlement Road, number 1107. Also on Monday, Grief and Grub for Guys is also presented by Beth Donovan Hospice, and that's taking place at the Marlborough Pub in North Gore from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. There are 4 dates: the 3rd, the 10th, the 24th, and the 31st. It's a 4-week program to help men who are grieving the loss of a loved one. It's an informal gathering to connect and share a meal together. Advanced registration is required for that one. On Friday, March 7th, there is a Jigs Dinner fundraiser at the Russell Legion, hosted by AMIC. The menu features chicken, potatoes, carrots, turnip, stuffing, peas pudding, figgy duff, salt beef, blueberry lush, and all the other Newfoundland treats. Traditional Newfoundland music will also be on the evening. Tickets are $40 each, and the evening starts at 5 p.m. On March 7th, Ross is hosting their St. Patrick's Day Trivia Night at 7 p.m. at the Alfred Taylor Rec Centre in North Gore. They have a cash bar, Irish stew, games, a 50-50 draw, raffle prizes, and a whole lot more. March 8th is International Women's Day, and there is an invitational bonspiel at Kempville in support of Naomi's Family Resource Centre. There are 2 draws, 2 games, snacks, lunch, and prizes. It's $200 per team to register. Also March 8th, Diamonds in the Sky, a play by local playwright Kim Blanche, is being presented by ITR. It's an original 1-act mystery, comedy, and drama rolled into one. This is an exclusive 2-show engagement. Tickets are available online, just $20, for what I know is going to be an awesome show. Don't forget to consult the calendar for our Youth Association regular events, as well as the regular activities that take place at all of our legions. It's all in the community calendar. And that is our news and events for this week. In this week's Business Spotlight, we are talking about the Osgoode Township Museum. The Osgoode Township Historical Society and Museum traces its founding back to November 23, 1972, when the first meeting to organize the New Horizons Historical Group was held. Their purpose in establishing this group was to research, create interest, collect data, preserve, and publish the history of Osgoode Township and the genealogy of its residents. The founding group developed rapidly and were incorporated under the Province of Ontario Statute of Letters patent issued in the name of the Osgoode Township Historical Society and Museum on the 25th day of November 1975. The initial objective was to prepare a story for the Township of Osgoode's 150th anniversary in 1977. It was on August 8, 1973 that the founding group signed an agreement with the Township of Osgoode covering the use of the building and property then known as the Vernon Public School. The group held their first meeting in the school on August 23, 1973. The official opening of the museum was held on September 21, 1973, with many interesting articles of bygone days on display for the first Visitors' Day. The Agricultural Museum building was subsequently built and officially opened on August 12, 1989. It now provides a home for the vast farming and industrial collection held by the museum. The Osgoode Township Museum tells the story of Ottawa's agricultural and rural heritage with a focus on agriculture in the former Osgoode Township. The museum hosts a collection of approximately 10,000 artifacts, ranging from housewares and clothing to full-size tractors and other farming equipment in the 2 main exhibition spaces. If you visit during the spring, summer, or fall, you'll get a chance to wander around the grounds and the orchard and the 10,000 square foot heritage garden modeled after a 1907 school garden. Inside the museum, the brand new permanent exhibition space displays the incredible story of the township and its people. Learn stories of how Indigenous people and the first European settlers paved a path for the current-day rural community members and how these residents are cultivating their connections with the past, present, and future. The museum hosts a variety of family-friendly online workshops, talks, and programs, and creates connections through partnerships with other organizations in the community. The museum offers a variety of programs catering to different audiences. Educational programs. Designed for school groups, these programs align with the Ontario curriculum for grades 3 and 4. The museum provides online discovery kits such as Building with Boyd Blocks, which delve into settler trades and community development. These kits include interactive worksheets and activities, making them suitable for both classroom and remote learning environments. The School-Age Learners Kit is designed to give students an up-close look at real artifacts and begin thinking about why museums collect objects, how to observe objects in detail, and use those findings to discover what an object could be. The kits are a small plastic tote that include everything you need, including a teaching guide with curriculum links, 2 books to read as a class, objects to discover together, and worksheets. The Young Learners Kit is intended for young learners in preschool and kindergarten, and there are step-by-step instructions included that will walk you through the entire lesson. The kit is a small plastic tote that includes objects to discover together, 2 books about museums to read it as a class, and the materials for a craft activity. Building with Boyd Blocks focuses on settler trades and how those workers would have built up the community around them. It dives into the history of the famous Boyd brothers of Osgoode and uses examples of images from the museum's collection to show the different styles of block. Students will have the opportunity to complete interactive worksheets, quizzing them on their new knowledge of settler trades, and a fun activity building a Boyd block house on Google Slides. Throughout the year, the museum hosts various events and workshops aimed at families and the broader community. These include monthly programs featuring crafts, activities, and seasonal celebrations. Notable events are the annual tree lighting ceremony and thematic talks on local history and heritage. In response to evolving community needs, the museum has developed virtual content, including online workshops, lectures, and virtual tours. These initiatives ensure that individuals can engage with the museum's offerings regardless of their location. The Curious Curators virtual field trips are available over Zoom for school groups, homeschool groups, and youth groups, such as Cubs, Brownies, Scouts, Girl Guides, etc. The session includes an hour-long interactive presentation over Zoom that offers a behind-the-scenes close-up look at artifacts in the collection and can be tailored to suit ages 6 to 12. The Curious Curators program gets groups thinking about what it's like working in a museum, why museums collect artifacts, and how those artifacts help the museum tell the community's story. Tailored for older adults, a coming soon new project called Bloom Dementia Friendly Program is a sensory garden program that emphasizes immersive activities like flower pressing and botanical card making. Sessions are conducted in a tranquil garden setting from June 1st until September 30th. Features like the interactive farm stand in the Rooted in the Rural exhibit provide hands-on learning about local agriculture, allowing visitors to engage in play-based learning. The Heritage School Garden is modeled after the 1907 Rittenhouse School Garden, a 10,000 square foot space offering visitors a glimpse into historical gardening practices. The museum encourages volunteers to participate in maintaining and interpreting the garden. And in community outreach, museum staff can visit retirement residences, seniors' homes, or community centers to deliver costumed presentations, group discussions, and artifact showcases. Each session lasts approximately 45 minutes. And the museum is open to setting up interactive tables and displays at community events, sharing heritage garden seeds and engaging with the public. And finally, there's a historical walking tour of Metcalfe on the website as well that is really cool. It was published by the Metcalfe Women's Institute and the Osgoode Township Museum in 2011. This historical tour will take you past the finest village buildings which survived from 100 years ago and more, most of which are still thriving institutions or businesses. Only 2 of the buildings chosen are no longer standing. The Commercial Hotel, where Victoria Park is now, and the Continuation School, where Metcalfe Public School is now. The remaining buildings have all had renovations, but a close look will find many features visible from an early day that can help us to imagine what an earlier economy and social life was like. In a world which is changing so rapidly, it is important to pause and take stock of our past to appreciate how the strengths of our smaller communities have developed and to think about how they can be maintained. Originally written 20 years ago as a walking tour guide, the history told in this booklet remains relevant. All the buildings still stand, and most remain open to the public. The guide provides an easy introduction to the history of the village and will appeal to both longtime residents and visitors to the community. The Osgoode Township Museum operates from Wednesday to Sunday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., with one Saturday every month dedicated to special programs and activities. Admission is by donation, making it accessible to all visitors. Be sure to check out all the museum has to offer. They are the place to be for the history of the area. It's so much more than genealogy and artifacts. And thank you to the Osgoode Township Museum for all of their words. A lot of those words that I just shared with you are directly on their website, but I wanted to make a point of sharing them with you this week. And that is our business spotlight for this week. In this week's historical segment, we meet the McVey family. And this excerpt is written by William McVey from Metcalfe in the Pioneer Families publications. And this is Stuart McVey and Marianne Carson. In the year 1832, a cholera epidemic raged through Europe, killing thousands. Many, expecting to escape, emigrated to North America, only to die on boats at Gros Isle or later in Canada. Stuart McVey and wife Marianne Carson and their small baby girl left from Ballymona, County Antrim, early in 1832, and after a long 14-week voyage in a sailboat, were in Montreal, and Stuart was stricken with cholera. The young wife, sitting in the immigration shed, would see a cart come every 2 hours to take away the dead. A cousin was contacted, and she brought Stuart a cup full of castor oil, saying, "If you drink this, you may get better. If not, you will die." Stuart drank the castor oil and lived and reared 13 more children. Although they had been linen weavers in Ireland, the McVeys spoke with a broad Scottish dialect, sang Scottish songs, and considered themselves Scottish. When Stuart was ill, Marianne got a job picking hops in Lachute, carrying her baby on her back. When well again, Stuart made his way to an old lumberman's shack near Hallville. Others from Antrim were around Reed's Mills. In 1842, the family was enumerated under the name Stuart McPhee, living in West Osgoode with 6 children. The children could attend the nearby school while there, SS number 5. Thomas McVey and wife, both over 45, with 2 sons, were next door. William questions, who were they? In 1846, they were across the river, Lot A in North Gore, and later in Manotick, and finally in Marvelville. Families moved around easily in those settlement years. There was not much to move except people. The parents, Stuart and Marianne, remained staunch members of the Church of England. Some of the children became Presbyterians or Methodists, and a few grandchildren were Baptists. Stuart and Marianne had 14 children, and we will go through those 14 and then we'll break them down a little bit. First was Margaret, who married Robert Latimer in Richmond, and they lived on North Half Lot 7, Concession 3 in Nepean. Matilda married Abraham Bradley, and they lived on Lot 27, Concession 4, also in Nepean. John married Hannah MacDonald. John married Hannah MacDonald from Kenmore. Guess who we're going to learn more about shortly. James married Sarah Ann Bennett, and he was living in Osgoode at the time of the 1881 census. Stuart, there's no other information on Stuart. He may have been unmarried. William married Grace Brunton from Marvelville, also somebody we will talk a little bit further about in a moment. Jane married Tom Bratton, and they lived in Wisconsin. Marianne married Stephen Bradley, and they lived in Lot 26, Concession 4, also in Nepean. David married Annie Montgomery, and they lived in BC. Elizabeth was the second wife of John Shore. Martha was unmarried, lived in North Gore Township. Robert, also believed to be unmarried, lived in North Gore Township. Martha Agnes married James Fader, and Carson married Grace Agnes Montgomery, and they lived in West Half Lots 35 and 36, Concession 11, so quite a bit further east than sort of Kenmore, Ormond, Harmony areas. So we'll break down a little bit further into the family trees, and we're going to look at 3 of these kids. John married Hannah MacDonald from Kenmore, and she was the daughter of William MacDonald and Elizabeth Bowl. They had 8 kids: James, Marianne, Eliza Jane, John Carson, Robert Stewart, William David, Jessie Ellen, and Maggie. Their son Robert Stewart married Mary Helen MacDonald, and they had a son named Garfield, who married Annie McConnell from Vernon. Annie was a schoolteacher for 13 years in the building that is now the home of the Osgoode Township Museum. John and Hannah lived in Marvelville, Ormond, Grandview, Manitoba, and when they died, they came back to Ormond and are both buried in that cemetery. John's brother William married Grace Brunton from Marvelville, daughter of John Brunton, and I could not find her mother's name. They lived on Lot 33, Concession 10, southeast of Vernon, in the Ormond area as well. They had 7 children: James, Elizabeth Agnes, Mary Ann, Sarah Maria, William Carson, Martha Jane, and John Brunton. Sort of half of the family went west and also some to the USA, but James and Sarah and John Brunton stayed in this area, so we'll tell you a little bit more about them. James married Ravanna Cherry, and they had 7 kids. Meredith married Emma Morris. Mabel Lillian married Murray Royer. Ethel Henrietta married James Robinson. Violet Grace married Giles Bogart. Frederick Russell married Margaret Wilson. Annie Caroline married Kenneth Carlisle. William James married Myrtle Ruth Cinnamon. Mabel and Violet left also for the U.S., but the others stayed in the Winchester, Metcalfe, Kempville sort of mountain areas. And James's sister, Sarah Maria, married John Alexander Karkner, and they had 7 kids. Russell was a member of the Canadian Infantry Quebec Regiment, and he was killed in action in France in 1915 at the age of 25. Charles Haddon married Eva Marie Long. Lawrence Palmer married Elizabeth Adams. They had 2 children, Grace Elizabeth and Russell Alexander. Grace married Samuel Barr of Cars, and they had 3 kids, Sharon, Ann, and Richard, or you might know him as Rick. So that makes Sarah McVey and Alexander Karkner Grace's grandparents, and Rick and Anne and Sharon's great-grandparents. William Nehemiah is unmarried. Harold Brunton married Alta Melissa O'Shaughnessy. John Milton married Rita Marie Shaw Macmillan, and Claire MacDonald, I think, was unmarried. Now, the third of those siblings is John Brunton, so James and Sarah's brother, and he married Annie Barry King. They had 10 children. Grace married Rudy Scarabelli. We'll tell you just a little more about her later. Margaret Peggy was a single mom to 3 kids in the 60s, very notable. William Carson married a woman named Rita. I don't have her last name. James Stewart married Irva Dugdale. John, I believe, was unmarried. It shows that he died in 1940, so I'm wondering if that was during the war. And then Anne, Helen, and Barry, I don't have any further information on. Another brother, King, died in 1941. Again, wondering if that was in the war. And then the last notable, but not that she was the 6th born, but I'm mentioning her last just because there are more details for her here in the family, is Jean. And Jean McVey married George Graham, and then later Hans Clausen. Jean and George, of course, are the parents of our famous Alan Graham from AJ's Catering in Metcalfe. And as an aside to the McVey family history, George Graham is also brother to Hazel Hicks, the matriarch of the Metcalfe Hicks family. So John Brunton and Annie are Al's grandparents. So there are many of the McVey family branches that have remained in the area since the 1830s. I hope you recognize some of their names and the names of the families that they married into. And we'll have more on those other families too as we come into contact with them through future episodes. But that is our historical segment for this week. In today's Community Voices segment, I wanted to share Grace McVey Scarabelli's obituary. She was 99 plus years old, not quite 100 when she passed away, but this write-up gives such a beautiful summary of her life that I wanted to share it with you in this segment today. Grace Catherine Scarabelli, née McVey, 14th of May 1923 to 22 November 2022, 99 plus years. Grace lived her life as an exciting adventure, with the world to explore, new people to befriend, languages to learn, dinners to create, causes to take on, and many wrongs to right. She was a wonderful mother and matriarch to her large extended family, a social activist, a businesswoman, a renowned cook and entertainer, and an all-around bon vivant. She almost made it to 100, which was her goal, and as determined as she was, probably annoys her still. The eldest of 10 children and a fourth-generation Canadian, Grace was born in Marvelville, a farming community in southeastern Ontario, to J.B. McVey, a farmer and businessman, and Anne King, a schoolteacher. Grace spent much of her early years entertaining her younger siblings with made-up stories and her own daring exploits. She was known to be impetuous and a bit of a daredevil, and was nicknamed Peter by a cousin, a United Church minister, after the saint known for his impulsiveness. The nickname stuck, and all her family would call her Pete, or Aunt Pete, from then on. As an adventurous 14-year-old, her irrepressible spirit and open mind took her from the family farm to Brampton, Ontario, where she spent her teenage years and graduated high school. She joined the Army in 1942 at 19 and moved to Kingston, Ontario, studying at the Royal Military College as one of the first women accepted into the officer training program. As a CWAC, Canadian Women's Army Corps, with the second highest IQ test recorded, though she'd be embarrassed hearing us brag about it, she served in the Canadian Army Intelligence Corps. After the war, she moved to Montreal, where she earned her commission as a second lieutenant. She loved Montreal with all its exciting multicultural life, and there met her future husband, Rudy J. Scarabelli, a civil engineer, and raised her 2 children, Michelle and Carlo. In 1958, Grace and her young children moved to Venezuela to join her husband, arriving in the middle of that country's revolution, machine gun fire a common occurrence. She made the most of living in the oil camp of Maracaibo, learning the language and culture and befriending all kinds of interesting people, and generally challenging the status quo. Back in Montreal in the 1960s, she insisted her children attend French schools, much to the consternation of some of her more conventional friends and family, and she learned French right along with them. She also expanded her cooking repertoire and became known for her fabulous dinner parties under the tutelage of her father-in-law, Carlo Scarabelli, who had just retired as executive chef of the Chateau Laurier. As her children became more independent, she focused on her own education, studying at Dawson College, where she aced all of her essays on everything from early Irish Renaissance literature to sociology. Though now in her mid-40s, her gregariousness won over her younger classmates and professors, no matter the age difference. She went on to graduate with distinction from Concordia University in applied social science. Throughout that period, Grace worked with women in need and co-founded the new Women's Centre, Centre de la Femme Nouvelle, the first federally funded women's services centre in Canada. As an activist, she fought to establish Chez Doris, Montreal's first women's shelter, and in 1977, after 2 years of lobbying various government bodies, she led the first group of Canadian civilians allowed into China to learn of that country's family planning practices. In the late 70s, Grace was accepted into McGill University's Master of Social Work program, but decided to hang up her academic hat when her husband was offered another job in Venezuela. In Caracas, Grace worked privately as a counselor and as a member of the NGO group Las Madrinas, raised funds to establish a school in the barrios, the slums of the city. Returning to Canada in 1980, she finally decided to put down her sword for social change, and she became an award-winning real estate agent in Montreal and Ottawa, finding homes for many a fellow vet and her large extended family of siblings and nieces and nephews, who all knew to turn to Aunt Pete for advice and help. But trudging through the snow to stick a sign in the frozen ground finally lost its appeal, and it was time to head to a warmer climate. Upon moving to Victoria to retire in 1994, she became the president of the Newcomers Club of Greater Victoria, as well as an active member on the board of the Unitarian Church, throwing herself into fundraising activities with her usual enthusiasm, business savvy, and creativity. In Grace's eyes and heart, no one was a stranger, just an individual to befriend, and everyone she met invariably felt they were heard and appreciated. She had an incredible joy for life and fun, and a wonderful sense of humor till the very end. She encouraged, guided, and was our champion with tireless love and devotion. With all of her achievements, in the end, she always said she loved being a mother first and foremost. Grace died peacefully in Victoria, BC, her children by her side. She is also survived by 2 siblings, Helen McVey and Barry McVey, and by many loving nieces and nephews. Her family would like to offer a special note of gratitude to all of her caregivers and the wonderful staff at Highgate Lodge, where she lived happily for the last 6 years of her life. To Jonah Vijandre and her parents for their remarkable kindness and loving care, and to her good friend Grant Marvin, who plied her with chocolate while recording many of her amazing stories, some of which you can find below, along with video clips shared by Nancy A. As an expression of sympathy, a donation in Grace's honor to your local Red Cross would be appreciated. Now, there are a number of website links, as noted, at the bottom of her obituary, which I think I've actually never seen before. Clicking on them mostly brings you to a place to sign in to access them, which is totally understandable. But the first one I clicked on was an audio track about getting her first skates. It's adorable because it's her voice telling the story. And the basic story goes that she was the oldest in the family, and she got the skates first. So she laced them all up, and she went out to where she thought the ice was, while the rest of the brothers and sisters watched intently. She took 2 strides and fell right through the ice up to her neck. And that's it. That's the story. She said they were laughing. It was really cute to hear her tell it. You can click on the link. I'm sure you can probably still access it. So thank you, Grace, and thank you, Grant, who I'm sure was the one to capture her voice. And what a lovely keepsake for your family. And that is our Community Voices segment for this week. In today's mental health moment, I wanted to highlight this event that is taking place over the next 4 weeks in North Gore. I mentioned it in our events section earlier today. Grief and Grub for Guys is also presented by Beth Donovan Hospice at the Marlborough Pub in North Gore, March 3rd, 10th, 24th, and 31st. It's an informal gathering to connect and share a meal together. Grief and Grub for Guys recognizes that everyone processes grief differently, and this program offers a comfortable and welcoming environment where men can engage in meaningful conversations or simply listen without pressure or expectation. There is no cost to attend, but registration is required. I think it's poignant that this is taking place at the Marlborough Pub. I know that Jason and Steve use their signboard out front to pay tribute to the people that we lose in the community, and they always share that on their social media as well. It's a simple thing to do to let people know that they mattered and that they will be missed. I encourage all guys to take part in this program. Processing grief is something that guys are not very often encouraged to do, at least publicly. So they go to the local pub to have a drink to celebrate a friend. And this goes one step, or maybe many steps farther than that. I think it's an incredible initiative, and I wanted to give it a few extra moments on today's podcast. I hope you agree. That is this week's Mental Health Moment. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Osgoode Community Chronicles. I hope you enjoyed our connections from the past and our taste of the present. Now you know a little bit, or maybe a lot more, about the Osgoode Township Museum, and we also learned a lot more about the McVey family and their connections to our current residents of the community. And of course, our community calendar gives you all the details of most of the events that are going on in the community, with links, like I say, to register for them or to get more information about them. It's very easy to find on our website. Remember, you can catch all of our past episodes on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, or anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also tune in right on our website at osgoodecommunitychronicles.com, and be sure to follow us on social media on Facebook and Instagram as well. Don't miss next week's episode, where we'll share more news and events in your area and more stories of families past and present. Thanks again for supporting our snapshot of our local community. I'm Tracy Daviero, and this has been Osgoode Community Chronicles, keeping our rural spirit alive, one story at a time. I'll see you next week.